All right, so we are officially on live, having a conversation tonight about raising grateful kids. And so hopefully some of you are jumping on and seeing everyone's lovely faces. We're looking forward to tonight's conversation. And if some of you do join in and watch the conversation, or if you pick up in the conversation late, one of the things with Hangout is that it records the whole thing, and then anytime you can go to the YouTube channel and rewatch the entire conversation. And so for people who are jumping in, you can do that at any point. So I just want to thank everybody for participating tonight. This is the first time we're trying this, and so we're going to work out some of the wrinkles, but we're looking forward to talking about parenting. I also want to let you know that if you are logging in to view, there is a button that says Q&A on the left-hand side of your screen, and if you open that up, then at any point you're going to be able to submit questions into the right-hand column. So you can let us know what you're thinking about, throw something out there, and then toward the end we're going to try to answer some of those questions. So I just want to say hello again, and if you are tuning into this either live or sometime in the future, my name's Jen Williams, and I am not leading this because I'm a parenting expert. I am in fact not a parenting expert. I am just a parent in the trenches and trying to figure out this whole parent. So this all kind of got started was back in March, and the tweet that caught my eye as I went through was a tweet that read, 7 ways to stop the complaining under your roof. And as some of you can imagine, because you're parents too, as soon as I stopped everything else I was doing in my work life and clicked on the link, because I know that in our house, with me and my husband and 2 boys that are ages 7 and 4, there is plenty of complaining. And I would love to say that a lot of it is from our kids, or all of it is from our kids, but really it's all of us. And halting and silencing some of that and switching the attitude is something that is really important to us, and something I couldn't help but click. And so I clicked on the link, and it took me to a blog post written by a woman named Kristen Welch, who I had never heard of, but she blogs at wearethatfamily.com and just came out with a new book called Raising Grateful Kids in an Entitled World. And she wrote this blog post in advance of the book coming out and tells a story that actually gets told again in the introduction of her book. But as we're getting started tonight, I know some of you who might be tuning in haven't necessarily read the book or are familiar with that, but I want to share this story that she tells that kind of got the whole thing off and rolling. So I promise I'm not going to do a bunch of reading to you tonight. You can already see on the bottom some fabulous people who are with us. It's a whole. She says, every spring, we go to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. It's not only a big deal around these parts, it's the biggest indoor. A couple of years ago, we decided it was high time that our 3 growing kids got their first pair of cowboy boots. You might call it a rite of passage for children in Texas. We budgeted for the rodeo even more than usual, planning to purchase boots there because we knew there would be plenty to choose from, as well as special deals that would save us money. On the hour trip downtown, one of my kids complained about the seating arrangements in the van, the heat, and the very air that siblings dared to breathe. I corrected said child, and I was half tempted to squash the dream of boots, leaving this one scuffling along in tennis shoes. But after a quick apology was received, grace won out. We headed straight to the Justin Boots booth and helped all 3 of our kids try on and choose boots that 1, they loved, and 2, we could afford, which was a feat in and of itself because my kids can be picky and boots are expensive. But we accomplished our goal in under an hour and spent the rest of the day in new boots, looking at animals, watching roping events, and eating large amounts of food that probably shouldn't be fried. I'm looking at you, bacon and Oreos. On the way home, the same child's bad attitude surfaced again, this time about not getting to do something at the rodeo. It wasn't just whining, the result of a tiring day, it was ingratitude and entitlement. Complaints and warnings fired in rapid succession between the back seat and the front. The day had been a splurge from the beginning, but it wasn't appreciated. Luckily, it wasn't enough, even after Grace put a nice pair of boots on the kids' feet. Halfway home, in the middle of the tense ride with an unrepentant boot wearer in the back seat, my husband said, "That's it. When we get home, I want you to pack your boots back in the box, and I'll see if we can return them." This nearly broke my Texas heart, but I knew it was the thing to do. It saddened me to hear the tears, the begging, the promises, and then the question, why can't you show me grace? Buying you boots in the first place, grace, I said. Once we were home, we put the boxed boots on a high shelf and said, if you want the boots, you're going to have to work for them. He pointed to the huge mulched areas in the front and backyard. You have 3 days to pull every weed. I won't remind you, it's up to you. This job will pay for your boots, and this time you're going to earn them. And that was that. The rodeo happens in early March, usually before we have a chance to clean up winter's effect on our yard, and my gaze followed my husband's pointing finger to the weedy mulch beds, and my heart sank. It was going to be a lot of work. Lo, the weeds were many. My husband is kind and loving and a lot nicer than I am most days. That's true in our house too. But I could tell by the firmness in his voice and the tilt of his chin that he was serious. This was serious. The mounting ingratitude that had been an issue for weeks had to be addressed. I wanted to high-five him and sob at the same time. I wondered what our child would choose. My heart soared a little while later when I heard the front door click. I looked out the window and I saw my kid wearing old clothes, bent down in the wet mulch. It had started to rain. For the next 2 days, I watched him from that window, a little proud, a little broken-hearted, but with every pulled weed, I knew the hard work was making for a softer heart. And when we handed back the boots after hearing a meaningful apology, I knew that we had all won. You earned these, my husband said, and I won't take them away again. The boots meant twice as much. It will go down in our family as the infamous boot story. It was the day we generously bought our kids cowboy boots. It was the same day that we took them away. It definitely wasn't the first day my kids acted unthankful, and there have been many times since, but it was a day that we called out entitlement in our home and waged war against it. It was the day we reestablished the fact that we wanted to raise grateful kids more than anything else. So I think that's a great story, and I think for a lot of you, I know for me, it's something that I can relate to very much. And she goes on from there, and this was partly why I clicked on this tweet to begin with, was she said seven ways to stop complaining. And she goes on from there and does give some very practical ideas of how to against entitlement. But I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what is this whole entitlement issue and how does that play out with regard to our parenting. So for those of you who are jumping on and joining in, as I mentioned earlier, you can go to the left side and hit Q&A and write in some questions. But I do have some people on here participating with me tonight, and so looking at the broadcast, and Colleen has raised 3 girls who made it to adulthood very successfully. So Colleen is to be commended on her parenting and is in fact her first grandchild. So grateful to have Colleen with us tonight and to bring her perspective. And beside her, Devon is on with us, and Devon is not yet a parent. The being parented end of things. I don't know, but we're really glad to have you on as a recent college graduate in this conversation. And then besides, and his wife Amelia have 2 girls, and one of those girls is less than well, is she 6 weeks old now? 6 or 7 weeks old? She's And so they are in the fifth team. And then beside James is my sister. I'm louding her out right there in the moment. I could have just told you she was Laura, but she is my sister, and she and ages 8, 9. And then beside her, our friend Marcus just logged in, and I can hear his babies in the background. Hey, Marcus. Mark and his are both little. And then beside him is Marcia, and we might even get her husband John to pop his head in at some point. But Marcia and John have 2 kids. School, the other going into the 4th grade. And so we're coming from some different perspectives and some different places in parenting. I don't want y'all to talk, so that's joined us here tonight, a couple of questions, starting with one of the things Kristen Welch says earlier in her book, as she starts talking about this entitlement mentality. Time God created human beings, we have been selfish and entitled. That's not a new thing at all. Sometimes we talk about this whole entitlement thing, and we like it's that from the time of creation, when humanity fell, we are just born into this world as selfish and entitled people. And so really what has changed is not so much kids. Kids are kids. They come into the world with nothing. Kids are kids, but what has changed is our parenting. And so I want to throw out to the group right now, culturally, how do y'all think that we have really given birth to this entitlement mentality? What do y'all think that looks like? Everybody wants to go first.
I'll start. So what really struck me early in the book was when she decided to talk about how we as parents behave as though we're entitled and our kids learn it from us. And it was striking to me when she noted that any of us are really born deserving is love. And I personally would add probably safety to that as something that we all deserve or are given, and everything else is just an add-on. I thought it was really fascinating. She told a story. I know not everyone's read the book, but she told a story about buying their dream home, and then 2 years later thinking about wanting a bigger home with a better kitchen and other things. And I think it was so interesting to me how she really made me pause and say, I get so frustrated and angry, yes, angry, with my kids for their wants, but I show them want every day by the, hey, I want that shirt I saw in the magazine, and hey, I want new lighting in my kitchen, and even, hey, I want to eat a different meal tonight because I just feel like it. I demonstrate the behavior to my kids, and I think that this is a great example of it starts at home.
Absolutely. That was incredibly convicting. I feel like if you have started the book, or if you do pick it up, prepare for your toes to be stepped on a fair amount, because the thing that she does call out right away is that fact that that the entitlement starts with us. And we play into it with all of the I wants, I needs, and in fact, confusing those wants and those needs. And so, I don't want to move on too quickly in terms of, for some of the rest of you, just some other thoughts on how do we as parents play into and teach our children, whether we're realizing it or not, that entitlement. Okay. Y'all are being shy. That's okay. I'm going to bring you around a little bit. I think that this is so important, and I don't want to wait any longer to bring in the faith element of this. The piece that I outlined or underlined right away in the start of this book was she calls out Romans 12, chapter 2, and she gives it to us from the Message version and says, don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. And I think for me, so again, to get out of that, how do I fix my kids parenting mentality just for a minute, because I think sometimes we approach a parenting, it is how do I fix my kids, but starting from a place of how do I work on me first and look at that, is reading that in that translation, in that paraphrase, and saying, how do we become so well adjusted to our culture? And the truth of the matter is, whether we mean to or not, I think we very quickly give in to the everybody has this, and so I want this too. Everybody looks like this. Everybody has an iPad. My son said that to me in the car just a few weeks ago. He's like, Mom, I'm the only 7-year-old who doesn't have a personal device. And and I laughed, and we went through the actual statistics of how many 7-year-olds probably have a personal device. But in that moment, I'm thinking to myself, I know that I have taught him that mentality, because how many times has he heard me fuss about the fact that I have an iPad that, wait for it, is 4 years old. I mean, horror of horrors. He hears me talking about, I have this outdated iPad that has cracks on the screen, and then I want to turn around and be frustrated with him when he thinks he's entitled to one, because right away I'm playing into that cultural sense of what is it that I feel like I deserve. So I don't know what some of the rest of you might be thinking, but let me throw this out as well. I think one of the things that she articulates very well early in the book is the fact that part of the issue with this entitlement is that we put happiness in the wrong place. In other words, we put happiness as the priority and as our main goal. She talks about the fact that in her research, when she asks parents, what's their #1 goal, a lot of them will answer, for my children.
Are you asking that? Yes.
That our happiness is not our main priority, but that is very countercultural to say that we're not going to put their happiness above all else. And so let me throw this question out to some of you who are in this chat with me tonight. What does it look like to y'all when you think about parenting counterculturally? What does it mean for us to actively parent without prizing happiness above all else? Or maybe this helps a little bit. What should be above happiness? What do we want more than our kids' happiness? Marcus, what do we want more than our kids' happiness? You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there you are.
I'll just say enjoy, to actually be in a relationship with Christ that's fruitful, teaching him, just ways of the heart. I mean, all those things obviously supersede them, or supersede their need for immediate happiness, or for them to get their way from time to time. So that would be my 2 cents. Is just their joy is much more of my concern than their temporary happiness.
Yeah. Colleen, can I put you on the spot for a minute as one who's got 3 girls out the door? And y'all, I've only met Colleen's daughters a few different times, but I can tell you that they're all doing some amazing things in the United States, and also the United States. I don't know where that came from, y'all. And around the world. And so somewhere along the way, and Colleen, you and I have even had this conversation. You as a family made a decision that you weren't going to let things like happiness and fear of what could happen keep you from parenting your kids toward what God's call on their life was going to be, and what sacrifices might look like, and how that was bigger than them. So, Colleen, if I can put you on the spot, can you talk a little bit about what y'all put ahead of happiness in your home?
Well, I think a lot of it, too, is making sure that you're pleasing the Lord as far as the way you're raising your child. I wanted them, above all else, to be pleasing to Him. And I knew that someday that I was going to be accountable when I come face to face with the Lord. It was exactly how I mothered and how I was as a parent. And I made that my focus. I knew I had to be accountable to Him. And I used to use it a lot with my kids, too. If they asked why they couldn't do something that everybody else did, or why they had something that somebody else did, I would just kind of say to them, you know what, there's just something in my heart that's telling me that God is saying no. And if I didn't have the right answer, I said, you know, I just feel like God is saying no at this time. And I knew, and I would just tell them, I have to be accountable of what I tell you or what I say yes to you. So that was a big thing for me. And as far as, you know, letting the kids do things that others, or not doing things that others were doing, basically. So I always questioned, what would God want me to do at this time? But a lot of it too is just prayer, prayer, prayer.
Yeah, and that's a good one. And let me throw this out to some of you who are in this tonight. Can you think of a time that either as a parent you had to say no in a way that maybe squashed your child's happiness in the moment? Or can you think of a time that in the process you remember happiness not being the ultimate thing, and parents being willing to say no and maybe put you in that awkward position? Anybody have a story on that countercultural approach? What does that look like?
So I'll offer a thought, and I'll go back. I'm feeling guilty about your personal device statement because I think my kids started it probably. So my oldest has a personal device, and it's been really challenging, but I think it's a great example. We will not let her do things with that personal device. In her case, it's an iPad that other kids her own age and even younger are allowed to do. She is 12. She does not have a Facebook account. She does not do Snapchat. She does not have Twitter. She does not have other things that I don't even know exist yet, as far as I know, unless she's really getting one past me, but I'm pretty good at that. And even, you know, I read her text streams, and she knows I read them, and it's a house law, and we have a very consistent conversation about how we talk and the kind of conversations we engage in and the way we speak to our friends and the types of things we type and what it would, you know, how we would feel if someone else saw those words. So I think there's a good case where we've had some difficult conversations where, no, you can't have that platform, and it's because we want you to be safe and protected, or we view you as young for this, or even really just in the language thing, like she's had to explain to some of her friends why she exits conversations, but in my mind that's helping her learn to say no in what I would consider right now to be the little things, a conversation, when the no's are going to become more consequential, more important as the years go by.
And that's huge. I think social media is such a big piece right now in this whole conversation. You can't be a parent in today's day and age and not be talking about social media. And so tonight, I will say, just last week, I got my hands on a new resource that's really helpful in that regard. It's called Right Click, and it was written by Kara Powell. She's a PhD who has spent her career studying student ministry, student life, parenting. She's written a couple books about sticky faith. But she just came out with a brand new book called Right Click that deals with that. And in Kristen Welch's book, she spends a lot of time there as well. And in fact, for some of you who are parenting those preteens and teenagers, the cost of the book might be worth it alone for the cell phone contract that she shares in the appendix that their family used. And she's very quick to say that, you know, the rules for their family aren't necessarily the exact rules for somebody else's family, but our ability to be proactive as parents in setting those boundaries and knowing that part of countercultural parenting and not prizing happiness is being able to say, we're going to love you enough to set some boundaries. We're going to love you enough to say, sometimes we're going to hold you back intentionally from those points for your ultimate good, because that is our role as parents. And so I think we could probably do an entire series of chats on social media, and we probably will at some point, because it's such an important topic when it comes to parenting our kids today. And I will say this, one of the things she mentions as well is that in their house, part of their contract is that their kids' phones all have to be plugged in the kitchen by 9 o'clock every night, and that's where they stay docked. They don't go to their bedrooms. But she also said that she wished she had a video camera the day that she and her husband went to their kids and said that they were going to start having a media-free day, one day every week. And she said it wasn't because they were abusing it, it was because they wanted to proactively set a boundary. And she said the tears and the griping and the gnashing of teeth that happened were quite eventful, but proof in and of itself why that kind of boundary was necessary, even though it set their kids on a different trajectory and at odds with a lot of their friends, and caused them to kind of stand out for the first time. So what are some other areas? Social media is huge. What are some other areas where y'all can think of, whether it's a specific story or some things that have happened where parenting in a way that is different maybe from mainstream?
I'd just like to say that I didn't get a cell phone until the 11th grade, and I feel like I turned out just fine.
You know, Devon, the rest of us on this conversation didn't get them into young because they hadn't been invented yet. So we don't feel bad for your 11th grade cell phone.
I'm just saying, your kids could wait.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
it is true, though. I think sometimes our kids can convince. Go ahead, James.
I think for me, or for us as parents of a toddler, it's kind of a little different. We're not dealing with the Facebook thing or the social media thing, but what we do deal with a lot is the struggle of wanting to appease the moment and just to take the path of least resistance versus to do the harder thing, knowing that it could send them into a tailspin or a tantrum and having to pause everything to deal with that. I think a lot of times we just want to overlook things just because we know it'll be easier and we're tired or we don't feel like dealing with it or we know it'll set her off. Like this morning, we gave her a choice for breakfast and she said, we asked her if she wanted a banana. She said no. She said she wanted applesauce. And then, of course, she didn't eat any of her applesauce and is sitting there saying she wants a banana. And, you know, the easy thing would have been to just give her a banana because we're not going broke when she doesn't eat the applesauce. You know, but at the same time, we said, no, you don't get a banana because you chose applesauce and we don't waste things in our house. And, you know, and to instead of appeasing the moment, to take it and stop and to do the harder thing and then to deal with what happens as a result of doing the harder thing versus, you know, taking the path of least resistance, because I feel like when we just give in all the time because it's easier, that's how we're teaching an entitlement mentality, because if I want it, I get it. And so we're just trying to teach her, you know, to take time to teach her the harder stuff instead of taking the path of least resistance. And we give in sometimes, but all it does is delay the issue. It doesn't fix anything when we do that. So just trying to be more intentional, and it takes more energy, but, you know, I feel like it's better long term.
Absolutely. And without even prepping y'all, so you're doing a great job, panel, I have, going back to her 7 ways to stop complaining, we've already hit 2 of the big ways she gives us, and one of them is, she said, limiting media. Media specifically targets our children to want a lot of stuff they don't need. We have a TV and computers and devices, but besides filtering them, we turn them off. My kids still complain about it, which reinforces exactly why it's important. And then another one of her 7 that James just brought up is we're sticking to consequences. If we suggest a consequence, we commit to seeing it through as often as we can. I've come up with some stupid consequences in my day and have regretted my rash tongue, but something clicks in our kids when they understand that we're serious about some things. And I would say right off the bat, not that this is confession tonight, but that's one of my biggest consistent parenting mistakes, is in the moment I can do the lazy thing and do what's easy, and instead I'm telling them there are consequences to their behavior, that they do have to stick with their choices, and then when we give in, we change that message, and we change that expectation. And so, and again, I think that's something we model too for ourselves, is that, you know, we buy one thing and then we decide 2 months later we don't like it and buy the next version. And, you know, we aren't teaching our kids those natural consequences and some of that progression. One of the other pieces that she throws out there, now that we're kind of back around to this list, is she says that we're asking for hard work. She said, I think many kids in our culture, my own included, don't know much about hard work. A few weeks ago, we spent most of the day in the yard, and the more my kids complained, the more I realized how much we had neglected giving them hard, dirty work, and we are changing that. So let me throw that out there to y'all. When it comes to work, when it comes to, like her boots story, they sent their son out to work in the mulch beds. What does that look like? What are maybe some ways or some things in your houses that that you've used to embrace that mentality of, if we're going to push back on entitlement, part of that is embracing hard work and connecting work with reward?
So Jen, I'll speak to that. I work very hard to make sure that my girls, even though they're 4 and 2, understand and learn work ethic. I think that's, for me, a way that I worship is through my work. And so I want to instill that in my kids very early. So every other weekend, we have car wash day, and the kids are consistently washing the car. We take pictures, we make it fun, that kind of thing. But the idea is that I want them out there getting their hands dirty. I want them working. The reward is a daddy-daughter date, every other weekend. So we have a good time, doing it. But I never want them to grow up, even at 4 and 2, with this mindset of, we just get a date because that's what we're, supposed to get. I want them to know that things are earned. And I don't think, it's too early to teach some of those values. So.
That's good. Marcia, you've been working all day, so what does that look like? In fact, your work for your family is in your backyard, so how do your kids get involved in that?
Yes. I don't know how well my connection is right now because it's a little bit choppy hearing y'all, but you guys probably all know that I'm pretty assertive, and so a lot of times my last rant to my kids was, you're sucking out of the system, but you're not contributing anything back to it. I think I screamed at them for drinking 6 cans of root beer in one day, and I said, my problem isn't even that you drank 6 cans of root beer. I don't care. I love that all your neighborhood friends are here. I love that, but it's not my job to pick up the 6 empty cans of root beer from the day. So eat and drink and be merry, but clean up after yourselves and contribute back to the system. So I think one thing that we have done in the past that has helped with that is we established our ticket system that we do primarily in the summers, where every time they do something that's green related, like it puts energy into the system, vacuum or clean up after the dogs or feed the dogs or take out the trash, they get a ticket. And then in return, expenses, anything red, costs them a ticket. So if they want to go to the library, it's a ticket. If they want to go to the pool, it's 4 tickets. If they want to go to the movies, it's 20 tickets. And it's amazing because they're learning, John quotes to them all the time, the best place to go when you need something is to work. So they're learning that if they want something out of the system, they actually have to put into the system in order to get it. So, I mean, there are days where I still picture beating them with the mop when they get home from school. But for the most part, like, they get it because they see that my work doesn't end, that it's literally in the backyard. And so I think they're getting it. I don't know. I guess we'll find out when they're adults if it worked or not.
I think that's great. I love the ticket system, and I know a couple of people that do variations of that, and that might be something that we adopt this summer too. I want to bring into the conversation, y'all can't see them, but Shara and Dave Ray are on here, and Shara threw out there that said, I know for me it's a type A thing. I don't have time to allow them to screw up while working hard, and I know I'll have to fix everything behind them, which means more work for me because they won't do it right. She said, I need to work on that, as the value of hard work is more important than it being right. And Shara, I definitely think you're not the only one on that boat. Sometimes when I ask my kids to clean up the kitchen, and then it's just easier to get them out of the way so that I can do it the way I want to do it, But I think that Kristen Welch would argue, and I think the thing we all know as parents is that ultimately we're not teaching them anything, and we're kind of choosing the lazy route out when we take over for them. And so our ability to let our kids participate in that allows them not only to learn the value of the hard work, but also the payoff of knowing that, no, you weren't entitled to this thing. Marcus, I love how you said that. You know, your daughters aren't entitled to that special treat and time with daddy, but it is something that they can reward, they can earn, which makes it that much sweeter, that much greater, is they know they did something to be part of that. Now, Marsha, your kids know when they're putting something back into the system that when they're participating in it, it feels like there's ownership in that. And I think that's such an important piece. And so one of the things I want to jump to as well in this conversation is, you know, there are these practical things, some of the other ones that are on her list, and we'll maybe get to some more of these more in depth in the next conversation, is some of her other 7 things for waging war on entitlement, is she says that we're exposing them to the world. So when you're only looking and thinking about yourself, you can only see what you want. But when you remove the blinders and see needs around you and in the world, it alters your perspective. Exposing our kids to other cultures and how most of the world really lives stirs up gratitude like nothing else. And she also says we're extending grace and leading by example. Living by a bunch of strict rules and do's and don'ts isn't the answer. Being flexible with your own rules is not only necessary, it's healthy for your family. When I compare and complain, I'm leading by example, but when I'm thankful and gracious, they are watching. It's important to admit when we're wrong and ask for forgiveness when we hurt our kids. And so again, it's back to this big thing of, if we're going to start a conversation on breaking and waging that war on entitlement in our homes, it has to start with us. And we all know as parents that our kids are watching and learning so much more from watching us than they are from what we're yelling at them in our frustration in some of those moments. And so one of the things that I want to throw out there to y'all as well are, what are some of the ways, so again, proactive parenting, what are some of the ways we can be modeling gratitude for our kids?
I think one of the great places we can start is thanking the people in our own house when we appreciate something or when something happens. I mean, I know I can get frustrated that my kids don't thank me for making them dinner. But how often do I thank my husband for making us dinner? And I think when they see us offer thanks, even for those very, what we would call simple day-to-day things, but acknowledging it as an act of service that someone gave you, or be it through time or money or energy or what it may be, when they see us saying thank you for those little things, it occurs to them to say thank you for those things. And even when we verbalize in front of them, kids understand so much more than we give them credit for. I'll offer an example. We were at, I think it was Sam's Club a couple weeks ago, and the bill was somewhat redonkulous. And I remember I looked at John, my husband John, not Marsha's husband John, and said, I am so thankful. I am so thankful that this is a bill that we're able to pay because of the jobs that we've been blessed with. And one of our younger children actually said, what do you mean? And acknowledged, you know, and we had a conversation, total dorks, right there in Sam's Club, talking about the fact that not everybody can walk up to a register and swipe a card and magically get 8 bags of Smart Pop. Like this is something that we're blessed by, but I think by them hearing even us acknowledge, I'm so thankful that I was able to get that. And that's an extreme example, but I mean, I'm so thankful that we're in a position where when we want to turn on the heat, it's on. Right. Acknowledging those things means something, and the kids hear us doing that.
That's a great example, because they're definitely mimicking that, and I know I don't say it enough. In fact, our 4-year-old called me out on Sunday because I always, when I'm giving my kids a drink or something like that, if they don't say thank you right away, I'm always saying to them, say thank you, say thank you, say thank you. And Bryant, again, my 4-year-old, took my empty cup that was sitting on the side table, and without me asking him to, he went back to his bathroom where his step stool is so that he could get up high enough and fill my glass with more water, and then came walking out to the living room with it. And as he's walking out and handing it to me, he's going, "Say thank you, Mom, say thank you, say thank you." And I mean, now granted, at that age, it's mimicking, but what he's looking for in that is that preemptive, you know, am I out ahead telling my kids thank you? And I think a lot of times I just, you know, I give them that sense of, well, you're just expected to do things. And again, that feeds entitlement. So I think that's a really good example. What else do y'all think? Like, what are the ways that we can model gratitude?
Well, I hate to be the person with the dark example again, but one thing that I did to my kids this year is I made them start packing their own lunches. Oh my gosh, it is amazing. I don't even know if they're actually like developmentally ready to pack their own lunches, but so they pack their own lunches every day. And I'll tell you, the days where I get up and actually pack their lunches for them, they act like I am Miss America. Like, they actually thank me. They compliment me when they get home on how amazing their lunch is. So I'm like, okay, so maybe it's sick that we've like taken something away from them to show them how grateful they should be, but it works.
Yeah. Well, and that's where Shara's jumping in here. We're going to get her in person next Wednesday. But Shara and Dave, thanks for contributing on the Q&A app. But she says that I think that it's important to really check ourselves regarding everyday grumbling, from yelling at other drivers, price of gas, poor service at a restaurant, etc. Vocalize the blessings and the grace instead. So that's kind of back to where Laura was saying, you know, we got to make sure that we're articulating those things. And on the other side of things, we got to be, like Marcia's saying, are we giving our kids enough opportunities to be grateful for things? Are we asking them to do hard work and then using those opportunities of grace to step in and do it for them, to practice some of that, you know, and to even check ourselves to know, are we modeling gratitude in a way that is rubbing off on our children? You know, are we giving them opportunities to grasp it and even practice it in our role as parents? So I think those are really, really good examples. And then the other big thing that she has on here is just remembering that, you know, part of the things that we actively do to wage war on entitlement is remember that we are different. From a faith-based parenting standpoint, we are told again and again in Scripture that we are to be set apart, that we are to be holy as God is holy, which means we are to do things differently. And she says, you know, we have to actively raise our kids with the mentality that they are strangers in a strange land, and that they are going to be different. And so we are going to ask things of them many times that the first response is going to be, nobody else's parents are asking them to do that. But above all else, do we want to raise our kids to be happy, or do we want to raise them to love God and love others and understand that a big piece of that is sacrifice? Sorry, you can hear my little one in the background. So just in, you know, as we get closer to the end here, again, if you have questions that you want to throw up for a little bit of Q&A here at the end, I do want to come back into that faith piece of how are we connecting for our kids what Christ did for us in his sacrifice, and then how we live into that. And I think it goes back to as well, how are we exposing our kids to the world in an active way to say, you know, not everyone has what we have, and part of our role is that we are blessed to be a blessing. And so how do we counteract entitlement by proactively working to bless others and to sacrifice and extend what we've been given? And so, Colleen, I'm going to jump back over to you really quick and put you on the spot again, just as the more experienced one in our midst who's seen that really come to life with your kids. You know, what are some ways that we can give them that perspective and expose them to those bigger pieces?
Yeah, a lot of it is getting them involved in, when you're involved in ministry, is for them to come beside you for a lot of things. I mean, I know I've worked in children's ministries and that kind of thing, and I always had them at church the same time I was, and to get involved in ministry. Eric and I have both taken our kids to a nursing home ministry at one point too when they were younger, and just having them see you serving others, and to be seeing others like grateful for the service that you've done for them. The kids see that. I mean, they see the people that are grateful when you are giving of yourself, and that makes a huge difference. I mean, our kids have all been on mission trips around the world, all three of them, and it's because Eric has gone on mission trips, and they have witnessed that as well. So it's truly started home, and them seeing you serving the Lord, you know, and then it's so rewarding when you see them as adults and they are serving the Lord. And I know it's because by the grace of God they saw us do it. So.
And that's really, I love that. And Colleen, I know you've been reading the book too, but at the end, she kind of does come back to that place of someday I want my kids to be able to say that they watched us as parents model gratitude, that they saw us living grateful lives, that they understood that we knew that our lives were purely by the grace of God, and that we function every day with a mentality that says everything that we have is meant to be given because it wasn't ours to begin with. And so I think that's an incredibly a powerful dimension to our parenting that we don't always tap into as much as we could, because we are caught up in some of the everyday grind. And James, I loved your story earlier about the applesauce, because that's it. We can get on conversations and we talk about the things that we want to do, but it comes back to the kitchen table and the applesauce, and are we willing to teach our kids and to teach our kids to model sacrifice and to value what's in front of them more than immediate happiness. So let me, as we get here, again, closer to our time together, I want to do a couple things at the end. But before we get there, just one of the things that Kristen Welch intentionally does in her book is at the end of every chapter, she gives some very practical, okay, so here's this conversation. Now here are some things that you can do. And she gives it specifically for, as parents, here are some things you can do. And then she gives it, if you're parenting toddlers or preschoolers, here are some things you can do with them. If you're parenting an elementary school kid, here are some things you can do with them. If you're parenting tweens and teens, here are some things that you can do with them. So let me throw this back to y'all one more time here in this mix, and just ask for some more practical ideas. Marcia, you've already talked about your tickets. That's a great one. Marcus, you shared about your daddy-daughter dates and that work. What are some other things that we are doing practically in our homes? And again, I'll let you guys think about that for just a minute, and I'll give you some of the ones that she gives just at the end of the first chapter. She says, if you're parenting toddlers and preschoolers, a great place to start is let them color pictures and give them as thank you notes to people. I know for us down here, this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and at this point in the year, as parents, we're worn out, so we're not doing a good job appreciating the teachers. And so in some ways, we need to get on that track and model that for our kids. But I know tonight I had our 7-year-old writing a thank you note to his teacher, and my 4-year-old wanted to help, but I told him he couldn't because he didn't know how to write. That parenting fail again. And then as I was finishing my preparation for tonight, I came back to this and went, why didn't I let him color a picture to say thank you to his teacher? There are certainly things my 4-year-old can be doing to say thank you to his teachers. So she mentions that. And then for elementary kids, if you've got elementary kids, some of her practical go-tos is she said you can write blessings on sticky notes and put them on a mirror, or even fill up a whole window as a family with jotted down gratitude. And so there's just a fun gratitude activity. She also says consider putting a job board in the kitchen and start connecting work with reward. It's a great way to begin teaching kids the correlation between hard work and earning money. For tweens and teens, She talks about making your expectations clear. If you've noticed an attitude of entitlement in your tween or teen, talk with them about your expectations. Don't believe the lie that it's too late. If your teen isn't contributing, let them know what to expect. And then it says, don't engage in a battle. You might need to give reminders and reinforcements of your requirement if it's new. And if your older child won't cooperate, use Dr. Kevin Lehman's strategy that B, something your son or daughter wants to do, doesn't happen until A, something you want them to do, is completed. But then this was her big one for tweens and teens. She said, give them the gift of listening. At this age, more than anything, your child wants you to hear him or her, which is different from understanding or even agreeing with them. And so those are some of the ways for her. And so Shara's jumped in here with an idea. She said, Jana got grounded yesterday, and she had to get 500 points to get ungrounded, and I gave her a list of things she could physically do that were worth certain amounts of points to add up to 500, like washing windows worth 50 points, writing an apology letter worth 25 points, etc. That's really good. I'm going to need some more on your point system, Shara, so that we can, if you could write a blog post on that, we'll post that link to our parenting conversation next week, because that's really good, especially for younger ones, because money doesn't mean anything to my 4-year-old right now, but I think he'd understand that he could earn points. So what else, y'all? What else are some practical, tangible, what are things we can grab onto tonight in terms of teaching our kids gratitude?
If I can just jump in and tell you too, one of the things that I am real strong about is prayer and teaching kids to be prayerful and pray for a lot of things, but that's how they can find out gratitude too and praise when they see the prayers are answered. So I used to physically have them write down the prayers. I used to have like a poster board or whatever on my door, and we would write down prayers as they would talk about different things at school or different things that needed to be prayed for, and we would write them down. And when those things got answered, to be highlighting them, and the girls would be so excited when a prayer was actually answered and they could physically see it, that it was answered, and we could be praising and worshiping there, and that had them helped with the gratitude.
That's awesome. I love that. Because I don't think, as adults we talk about prayer journaling so you can back and see where God is answering, but I love that, to put that in front of our kids visually. Here's what you prayed for, so they can see it and come back and say thank you. That's awesome. I like that, Colleen.
I'll share one that I just thought of off the cuff, and again, it's probably pretty funny, but the kids and I think it was recently, it had to have been like on Veterans Day or something, and John was out of town, so our rule is that we go out to eat when he's gone. But we just went to Subway that night, and there was a veteran behind us, and he said something to the guy of, is there a veteran's discount? And so I gave Emmett money, and when we got up to the register, and it was like $10. I mean, it wasn't anything fabulous. But we got up to the register, and Emmett handed it to the cashier, and I said to her, when we leave, can you please tell him thank you for his service? And the kids started giggling. And so the minute they handed us our food, my kids ran for the door, because then they caught on that they didn't want him to know it was us until we were out of the building. And they seriously ran to the truck like they were ninjas. I mean, it was so fun for them to be a part of some like secret mission like that. And it was just so cool, because they knew that what I said to the lady was, will you tell him when we leave, thank you for his service. So, and they were so excited, they called John that night just to tell him, what we did to the veteran at Subway. So, I mean, little, but I know that it was impactful for them.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love that. I think anytime, again, those are those little things that our kids really notice. That makes me think of one that I wish I could say that I do, but I have another friend who every time she goes out to eat with her kids, anytime their family goes out to eat together, as just a conscious act of acknowledging that A, this is a really big deal that we get to do this, and B, passing it on. Every time they go out to eat, they get a small gift card from that restaurant that they can then hand to somebody else within the next few days that looks like they could use it, or just to pass that on. And I think that's awesome, because I think it reinforces this is a really, this is something we need to appreciate, that we get to do this, and then the fact that we could, extend that gift and extend that blessing to somebody else is awesome.
I think one of the ways that Brittany, oh, go ahead, Jen.
No, you got it. You got it. Go.
No, I was going to say, one of the things that Brittany constantly reminds me of is, because so much of gratitude is in modeling, she would always ask me, babe, what are you reinforcing? And, that's a hard question when you think about parenting, when you think about, should I correct them? Should I not? Should I, what behaviors are being reinforced in your response? What type of gratitude or anything else will be, reinforced or encouraged by your responses to your kids? So I guess a practical thing for me is I constantly ask myself, Marcus, what are you reinforcing, in this moment? Because, so much of what we do for our kids, though we can have the point system and all of those things, the reality is that we have to model things first. And, those things aren't effective if we're not effectively modeling. Those other moments are just not as salient. So continuing to ask yourself, Marcus, what are you reinforcing in this moment, be it gratefulness or anything else? So.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I completely reinforced impatience and frustration for my kids tonight. So it's just good to remember and to know in every moment, what are we doing? Because I think then another piece, and I want to end with this tonight because I do want to pray for everybody on this call tonight as well. But I think a big thing is to remember that our kids are also watching when we understand that we are extended grace repeatedly. And one of the things she talks about in the book, and one of the things that I think is very scriptural, is our ability to be acknowledging to our kids along the way that we don't always get it right. That we don't always get this gratitude thing right, that we don't get this parenting, but that we're in this with them and for them, and that we want to stay in this. And so I just want to encourage all of you that are out there tonight, thank you for tuning in. And if you tuned in right there, just says to me that you're a parent that really is trying and working at it. And I think that God does not ask us to be perfect parents. He asks us to be faithful followers. And if we can just remember that and trust that His grace is so big, it's actually big enough to cover all of our not top-notch parenting moments. And so I know that that's something that I hold on to every single day. So next Wednesday at 8 o'clock, we're going to do this again. We're gonna ask some different questions and move in some different directions along this conversation of parenting. And so for some of you, if you have some questions or things that came up from tonight that you want to send in via email, you can email those to me at jen@ashleyridgechurch.org, or you can jump in next week in the midst of the conversation and submit those questions. But we're looking forward to talking again next week at 8 o'clock on Wednesday. But if you want to join me right now, I just want to pray for all of us. God, we're so very grateful that you have put us in a position to not only be in each other's lives, but that, God, you have put us in positions, whether we are parents and actively parenting kids that are in our homes, or if we're parenting kids beyond our homes, God, that you have put us in a position to pour into someone else's life. And God, we know how inadequate we often feel for that task. But God, we also know that you have told us that with you we can be made strong even in our weakness, and that with you we can do things that we haven't even imagined. And God, we want to ask you tonight to continue to come alongside us in our parenting, to lead our kids to a place where they understand, not because we've told them, but because we've shown them what it is to love you and to love others. And so, God, I pray for each of us in the coming weeks that we would model gratitude, that we would remember just how blessed we are, and to be grateful for that and to articulate that well. And God, I pray for every child represented in this conversation tonight, God, that you would watch over our kids, that you would let them see that you are in work in their lives, that you made them on purpose for a purpose, and that you would help us shepherd and steward those things in their lives as parents. And so, God, thank you for this time tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for your grace that is always more than enough each and every day of our lives. Thank you for giving those things to us in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.